So we're going to talk about exercise and Parkinson's, but really when it comes to exercise, it's really about balance. What I found is people with Parkinson's have a lot of strength. Is the control and is the balance that they lack. So what we're going to start to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what are the components of balance. And then we're going to differentiate between what are the physiological factors of balance and what are the neurological factors of balance. And then we're going to talk about various interventions about how they can improve your balance, and then talk about what you can do long term to really keep moving your balance, keeping your balance forward. Because the more your balance improves, the better your function is. Balance and function go hand in hand. What we've learned is that people with Parkinson's are very nervous about falling, and if you're nervous about falling, you're not going to engage. And if you don't engage, then your balance gets worse. So it becomes a vicious cycle that goes downward. But the one of the things we know is that the more you work your balance, the better your balance becomes and the stronger you become and the more you're willing to engage with your environment. So when it comes to exercise, it's really about finding ways to improve your balance. So when one talks about balance, there are 4 components that comprise balance: your eyes, your ears, the muscles, and the receptors within your joints. And any exercise program that you're going to engage with, if you wanted to improve your balance, has to engage these 4 areas: your eyes, your ears, the muscles, and your joint receptors. No. And to kind of illustrate this point, so in your eyes are what they call cones and rods. And this controls your peripheral vision. If you use your peripheral vision, you have better balance. But if you don't look, then the way you use your peripheral vision is keeping your head up. If your eyes are up and you're looking around the environment, you're using your peripheral vision. If you're looking down when you walk, you don't have peripheral vision. And therefore, it makes your balance, it makes you feel less steady and less willing to engage with your environment. And to kind of illustrate this point, let me show you something here. A couple videos now. My technology is not great, so please bear with me for a second here. I'm going to have to log in and log out to show you various videos. So this first video is a person just walking. It's a point of view. You're just watching a person walk. And as the person is walking along the path, you can see things around the environment. You can see the mountains in the background. You can see the trees over here. And what you're doing is you're using your peripheral vision, which gives you a sense of balance. And when the camera's moving, the person's walking, you feel quite steady. Does everybody see that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, now this next video I'm going to show you is a little bit different. Now, this video is a person looking at their feet when they walk. When you're watching this, do you feel as steady and as balanced as you did on the previous video?
No, not really.
Right. Right. And the reason why is because you have no peripheral vision here. So when a person with Parkinson's is looking down at their feet, they're going, I want to see my feet. I want to know where I'm at when I'm walking. What you're finding is it's making you less steady because you're not using your peripheral vision for walking. And that's why you'll hear therapists and family members and everybody around you saying, you need to keep your head up when you walk because and the person will go, I need to look at my feet to know where I'm at. Well, you really need to kind of learn to keep your head up when you're walking so that you get that peripheral vision to kick in. Does that kind of make some sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does to me.
So let me my screen. Oh, was there someone that had a
Phyllis, you're saying you cannot get the sound? Do you have a volume control on your computer? Because I think everybody can hear Dr. Blatt easily. Check the volume on your computer and turn it up. Go ahead, Stu. I would just
Okay.
continue on.
All right.
And
So,
Oh,
so the next part is your inner ear. Your inner ear is what controls your balance. And inside your inner ear is what they call the cochlea. And it has 3 different canals inside this inner ear. And each of these canals is filled with fluid. And when you rotate your head in different directions, it moves the fluid from side to side and it tells your body.
that's pretty amazing.
Ja. Jag bara ser dem led. Det är på så på magen när på
Please mute yourself. Please,
Okay,
everyone.
folks, I'm going to mute everyone. Stuart, once I mute everyone, you'll have to unmute yourself, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So inside your inner ear is this called thing, the cochlea, and it has 3 canals, and the canals are filled with water or filled with fluid. And when you move your head in different directions, it tells your body where you are in space and where you are. And what we know about people with Parkinson's is they have very limited head and neck movement. And therefore, when you limit this movement, it also then has a negative impact on the way you balance yourself. And let me show you one more video to show you what I mean by this. And I'll show you this video momentarily. Okay, excellent. Okay, so this is the cochlea. This is the part of the inner part of your brain, the inner part of your ear that helps you with your balance. And these are the 3 canals. The one at the top is the superior, so this one in the back is called the posterior canal. And this is the fluid. And when you move your head from side to side, it moves that fluid and it tells you that you're moving your head from side to side. The one at the top is called the superior canal. And its job is to tell you when you're nodding your head forward and when you're bringing your head back into what they call extension. So bending it forward and then bringing it back into extension. And the third one is called the transverse canal. And its job is when you turn your head to the right and when you turn your head to the left. So an exercise program that's going to be effective for people with Parkinson's needs to work on your vision and keeping your head up, as well as rotating your head in all different positions so you're getting this fluid to move around so your body knows where you are in space. But balance doesn't only require your inner ear and your eyes, it also requires strength. And when we say strength, it's not about weightlifting and bulking up. It's about core strength. Shoulders, hips, back, and stomach. The stronger your core is, the better your body's going to function. You can't work your hand if your shoulder's weak. If your shoulder is weak, your hand has nothing to anchor onto because your shoulder is not allowing it to function the further away from the body. So you need to do a lot of exercises that really work on shoulder strength. And the same thing with walking. You can't really. Was there a question? No. Walking is very difficult if you don't have strong hips. You don't have the ability to put your foot where you want it to land every time. So you need to work on hip strength. And if you don't have good shoulder strength and you don't have good hip strength, and your core is weak, there's nothing to anchor your shoulders and your hips to. So really exercise programs that are most effective for people with Parkinson's are ones that address your shoulders, your hips, your back, and your stomach. And then the last part is your joints. Your joints are pressure receptors. They tell you where you are in space. And the way those joints work is by putting pressure on them. The more you put pressure on your joints, the more your joints know where you are in space. So the way you do that is you do weight-bearing activities. You put a lot of pressure on your wrist. If you put pressure on your wrist and you keep your elbows straight, it shuts all the pressure from your wrist into your elbow, into your shoulder, so your body knows where your limb is in space. And the same thing with your legs. When you put weight on your knees and you pressure on your knee, and then the pressure from your knee goes to your hip, which tells your body where your hip is and where your knee is. So it's not only enough to work on the strength, but you have to get that joint compression so you give those receptors a lot of feedback. The problem with people with Parkinson's is they become very sedentary. And the more that you sit around and the less you engage with your environment, the weaker your muscles become and the less your joints know where you are in space. So that when you want to get up to move around, you feel less steady. And when you feel less steady, you are less likely to engage with your environment because you're afraid you might fall. And so all of these things fit together. So when you do an exercise program, you need to make sure that they're addressing all of these issues together. Your eyes, your ears, the muscle strength, as well as your joint receptors, knowing where you are in space. Does that make sense? Is everybody kind of with me on that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Now that's the neurological side of balance. Exercise programs that address that. But what we're finding is there's a whole host of other things that are physiological that affect balance. And the number one is dehydration. People with Parkinson's do not drink enough water, from my opinion. My perspective, I find that most people with Parkinson's do not drink enough water, and they become dehydrated. And the research shows that about 48% of all older adults admitted to the ER have some sign of dehydration, that they're not drinking enough water. And what the people who know me well, that I talk about drinking water all the time. And when you take your medicine, it's been an observation of mine for years that people with Parkinson's, when they take their medicine, they take just enough water to get the pill down. And what happens is that pill doesn't fully dissolve, and therefore it doesn't get into your bloodstream easily. So you have to drink enough water to make that pill dissolve. And what I recommend to people is when they take their pills, to take that middle-sized glass of water, not the juice glass and not the really tall one, that middle tumbler, and drink that while you take your pills, because that will give you enough water to get those pills down and to dilute your body so that they start to dissolve in your system. Thoughts or questions on that?
Folks, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and you can ask the question, or you can put the question in the chat box, either way, okay?
Is there a set amount of water you should be trying to consume?
I don't know that there's a set number. I just know that try to make sure that you're drinking when you drink your. Again, I usually time it by pills, because the majority of people I know that have Parkinson's take their pills at very set times. And if you need to make sure you're taking enough water to make those pills fully dissolve. So if you use that middle-sized glass is about 6 to 8 ounces. And if you're taking your pills 3 to 4 times a day, that's that's between 24 to 32 ounces of water that you're going to be drinking in a day. That's a pretty good base, even for average, for those of us without Parkinson's. So I would suspect that's probably a good number to try to shoot for. It's 24 to 32 ounces of water a day. Another one that we know that people with Parkinson's tend to become malnourished. They don't eat enough to give their body the demands, because when you have a tremor, you're burning calories all the time. And therefore you have to increase your caloric input to match the caloric demand. And in my opinion, a lot of people with Parkinson's are not eating enough to keep up with the caloric demand, especially if you have a tremor. And the way to do that is to make sure that you're eating a good, healthy diet is what you really need to look for. And for a lot of people, eating, trying to increase your calories by eating foods that are high in protein is a good way to go about that. So even if you're going to have like a smoothie or something that, or eat, if you're going to use like an Ensure drink, those are good ways to increase your caloric input without having to eat more and more and more. Eat foods that are rich in calories as a mechanism of increasing your caloric input. Also, what I've learned over the years is a lot of the people that I know who have Parkinson's do not sleep real well. They tend to wake up many times in the night to use the restroom, or they don't sleep well at night. And because of that, sleep deprivation will also have a negative impact on your balance. And we had a doctor come to our group to talk about sleep, and she was talking about developing a sleep pattern. Those of us who had children, when our children would go to bed at night, we would have a sleep routine for them. And a routine would be like, you'd start to say, okay, it's time to get ready for bed, go upstairs, put on your pajamas. And they would come down and say, okay, you can watch your show. And now we're going to go and go get your glass of water. And then I'll go upstairs, we'll read a book, we'll get you ready for bed, and blah, 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 blah. And that was a way to get your child to get ready for bed. It was preparing them from the day, from being awake to going into a bedtime routine. And that's very, very important for a lot of people to get into those bedtime routines, where if you want to go to bed at 10 o'clock, you don't start getting ready for bed at 10 o'clock. You start getting ready for bed at 9 o'clock, so that you start to prepare your brain for sleep. And it's also important for me, finding a routine for sleep is a good idea. Going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time helps develop more of a healthy sleep pattern. And the more of a healthy sleep pattern you have, you tend to have a better sense of balance and be more aware of your environment, because you're not sleepy during the day. Also, try to avoid activities that make you sleepy. So if you're watching TV in the middle of the day and you fall asleep and you miss half of your program because you fell asleep in your lazy boy chair, probably watching TV is not the best thing for you, because it's not stimulating your brain to keep you awake. It's actually putting you to sleep. So you want to, if you're finding that you're sleeping, not taking a power nap, but in the middle of the day, you're just falling asleep by not doing anything, you want to start to change your routine so that you're staying more alert during the day. Something else that we know that causes a lot of issues with balance is anxiety. The more anxious you are about getting around, the worse your balance becomes. And so therefore, you want to find ways of routines that help you reduce your anxiety level. And one of the things we talk a lot about is using visualization. If you know that you're going to a place that's going to be a high anxiety producing situation, let your mind play out a scenario where the outcome is a good outcome. Instead of worrying about, oh my gosh, if I go into this environment, I'm going to have all of these problems, and therefore it's going to be really disastrous. See in your mind a positive outcome. see your mind. So if you're like, I used to do a lot of therapy with people with Parkinson's and who lived in senior living apartments, and they had elevators. And the elevators became an area of high anxiety for a lot of the people that I worked with, because they would get into the elevator and in their mind they'd go, oh my gosh, what if I have a freeze? And when the doors open and all these people want to get out and I can't move. And the more that the elevator would go and the more they would work up in their brain that they were going to have a freeze. So when the doors opened, they automatically had a freeze because their brain was telling their body they're going to freeze. So we would spend a lot of time in elevators practicing getting in and out of the elevator, working on ways of not allowing their brain to freeze, but to prepare their brain for exiting the elevator. Thinking about what you're going to do when you get out of the elevator so that when the elevator doors open, you're ready to go. And the last is that sedentary lifestyle. If you find that you are sitting around more often during the day and you're not really engaging in your environment, this is an area that tends to reduce your balance, because the less you engage with your environment, the more it erodes your balance and makes it harder for your body to go. Lynn, did you have a question?
I did. Is that okay to ask?
Oh,
him?
absolutely, yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. What about that situation? I was wondering if it's anxiety, but when you're walking and then all of a sudden there's people close to you, and when people are close around me, it's all of a sudden I feel like I can't move, even though they're not touching me.
Right. And that again, I think part of that problem, again, and to me, what people with Parkinson's have shared with me is it's about anxiety. You're afraid that someone's going to bump into you.
Yeah,
If they're going, oh, if they bump into me, I won't have my balance to correct when they bump into me.
okay.
I don't know, Lynn, do you walk with a walker or a cane?
I use a cane.
Or do you walk by yourself?
I use a cane because of my balance.
The cane is a great thing, because what the cane tells us is that we need to give you a wider berth.
Oh, that's true.
So when those of us without Parkinson's see somebody with a cane or a walker or on crutches, we instinctually, because we don't want to bump into you. So the perception that they're getting closer to you is probably more on your side. We tend to give people a wider berth when we see a cane or a walker or something in the community.
Okay. Sometimes people think they're helping, and they go to open the door for me, but they're kind of halfway in my way, and I like, it's like, I don't know if I can.
And I think what you need to do is tell them, thank you very much, but I need a little bit more space. So if you can step to the side and let me go through, that would be helpful to me. So, I mean, if we hold the door for you, that means we want to help you.
That's true.
And so if you can let us know what you need so that we can be helpful. And so I think that the more that you empower yourself to let people around you know what you need and what you don't need, then it moves the level of control from us back to you, that you now have the power to control your own environment.
Yeah, I like that answer. Yeah. That's good.
I think other thoughts or questions that people have?
Yes. I'm Debbie. My husband has Parkinson's. So if we know we're going to be around maybe a little bit more, a group of people, more than just a few, we take a walker. It's just, and like if he goes walking outside, instead of taking his cane, he uses a walker. So that way he's got that steadiness for him, and he's gotten to the point where using the Parkinson's exercises, he doesn't have to use the walker in the house, and he doesn't have to use the cane anymore. But when we go places, we take the cane. If we're going to be around a group of people, we take the walker, and people are very accommodating to us, and it just gives him a sense that if somebody does bump into him, he's got something sturdy to hang on to versus his cane. And that's worked.
And
very
that is a great suggestion. And that's a great thing. And again, I like what you said, that the exercises have helped your husband improve his ability to get around the house, because that really is the key, is making exercise a part of your routine. It doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be consistent.
Yes.
So, I mean, ideally exercising every day, but the reality is most people don't exercise every day. So, but getting into a routine of when you are exercising, and whatever the exercise you do is one that has to be meaningful for you. And I think that brings me up to my next slide. So, the exercise programs should address the issues of core stability, shoulders, hips, back, and stomach. That the more, what we call is the proximal stability leads to distal mobility. What that means is when your core is strong, you can work away from the core. When the core is weak, you can't move away from the core because your body doesn't have the stability to move away from the core. You want to do activities that challenge your inner ear, moving your head from side to side, looking up and down, tilting your head from side to side. The more that you move that fluid in your inner ear, the better your awareness and the better your balance becomes, because now you're getting all that fluid to move around. Tracking an object with your eyes. What we find is that people with Parkinson's, their eyes don't move together anymore, and that's why people have a hard time reading, because the eyes, they don't converge, they don't come together. And what we found is the more that you work on an activity where you're tracking an object with your eyes, you force your eye, then track something with your eyes. And the easiest way to do that is take a ball or a pair of rolled up socks and toss and catch it to yourself. So when you sit and toss and catch something to yourself, what that does is it forces your head to look up when you toss it up, because you're tracking the object when it goes up. And then when it's coming down and you're catching it with both your hands, you're forcing your hands and your eyes to watch the object together. So you're getting your eyes to converge and move in unison, as opposed to one being stronger than the other. Also, breathing. What we find is when you're exercising, a lot of people tend to want to hold their breath. And what you want to do when you exercise is you want to count out loud when you exercise. So when you exert, count out loud. So if you're lifting your arm above your head, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So you're counting as you exert. That way it forces you not to hold your breath, but actually to breathe deep, to actually exhale on the exertion. And you can't count to yourself. You got to count out loud. You got to hear it with your ear. If you can't hear your voice counting, you're not counting, because you're counting in your head and you're still not breathing. So you want to hear it out loud. So when you lift your arm up, you're going 1, 2, 3. So you want to hear yourself count, so you know that you're breathing. What we've learned over time is home exercise programs. If you go to a therapist and they give you a home exercise program, as great as those home exercise programs are, the majority of people, and it has nothing to do with Parkinson's, most people never do their home exercise programs. And as a therapist, the rule of thumb is no more than 5 exercises on a home exercise program, or people won't do it. So what I tell people is home exercise programs are great, but the reality is most people won't tend to do them. If you go to a therapist, or you go to where they do a one-on-one session with you, that's better than a home exercise program, because you're now working with somebody. The problem is, if you don't feel like going to do the therapy or go to the exercise to work with the trainer, you call them and you cancel, say, I'm not feeling great today, so you don't go. And if you don't engage with that person, you're not going to get the benefits of the exercise. But the majority of exercises that we found are most beneficial for people with Parkinson's are group exercise programs. Parkinson's exercise programs that are done in a group. And the reason why they're the most beneficial is because the people like being with other people. One of the things that I've learned about the years of working with people with Parkinson's and getting to know people with Parkinson's is they lose their social network. People that they were socializing with premorbidly, they don't typically see that often any longer. And they don't have that social network. And as humans, we are social creatures. We like to be with other humans. And when we're in isolation, we don't do well. And everybody in the last 2 years can tell you how lousy the last 2 years were for the majority of us. Zoom is not like being in a group being in a group project, being with a group in a group session, and being cooped up in your house and watching Netflix gets old after a while. So this is really so. And what I found over the years, and Bob and others who have been in my exercise groups can attest to the fact that the group was what people liked. They didn't like my exercises. They liked coming to the group. And it was the idea of being with people that they knew that had Parkinson's, and they didn't have to explain anything to them. It was an environment that was a low stress environment.
Can I interject something?
Oh, please, absolutely.
I just put a link up in the chat box to our exercise page on our website. We try to keep track of all the community-based exercise classes that are meeting in person in the state, and they are listed by county. So look for your county, see if there's a class listed. If not, we are offering exercise classes on Zoom 6 days a week. But I agree with Stu, in person with other people is always the ideal. But if there's not one in your community, always check out our Zoom. But that link that I just posted has both the in-person classes listed as well as the Zoom. Okay.
No, that's great, because I can tell you that my exercise group that I run in Howell, when the pandemic started, we went to Zoom. And the majority of the people that were in the group did not care for the Zoom program. It was the same exercises that we were doing in person, but they truly did not care for it on Zoom because it didn't give them that same sense of being in that camaraderie that comes from being in the group. And the minute our facility opened up and let us back in, we went right back, and the people in the group are much happier being together than they were on Zoom because they didn't get that interaction that they felt when they were inside the group. Now, what we've learned—
I totally agree. I agree. Yeah, for sure.
And for my own personal, I did the Zoom and it was great. I like seeing my friends with Parkinson's, but when I got back to face with them, it made all the difference for me too.
Yeah.
Now, what we've learned over the last 15 years is medicine is critical for people with Parkinson's. Taking your medicines and working with your doctors is critical. But the other major component for people with Parkinson's is exercise. And there are a plethora of various exercise programs that are out there. There's your traditional PT programs. There's the Big and Loud program. There's the Power program. There's Rock Steady, which is boxing for people with Parkinson's. There's dancing for people with Parkinson's. There's the Delaying the Disease programs. There's pedaling for Parkinson's. There's Tai Chi. There's yoga. There's Pilates. There's anything under the sun. The bottom line is, it isn't any of these exercise programs are better than another one. What it means is, as long as you're moving, you've got to find the one that matches your need. Whatever you like is the one that's best for you. As I tell my friends with Parkinson's, if I had Parkinson's and they told me that ballroom dancing would cure my Parkinson's, I would take Parkinson's because I don't ballroom dance. It's not in my DNA. But you have to find the program. So if you like Rock Steady and you like the box and you think that's a great thing for you, you're going to do great with Rock Steady. But if you don't like the box and you don't like the app, it doesn't talk to you, it's not going to happen. So therefore, you've got to find the program that matches what you like. Whatever you're about is what you're going to be most successful at doing. But the key to a successful exercise program is the person with Parkinson's has to be actively engaged. If you're not engaging in the program, it's not the program for you. The program should challenge your balance. If you're not finding that you are feeling unsteady at times, that you're really are challenging, you're moving away from your center, you're working out away from the core. If you're not finding that your balance is, you're not wobbling at times, you're not challenging your balance enough. You've got to find ways to challenge your balance. A program needs to address your core weakness, your shoulders, your hips, your back, and your stomach. And it needs to increase your heart rate. Now, this is the easiest of all of them, because if you have not exercised in a while, doing any activity is going to increase your heart rate. You don't have to get to a certain number. You just have to start to feel that your heart is beating faster and you're breathing heavier. If you're not finding that your heart rate is going up and you're breathing heavier, you're not pushing yourself to really get the maximum benefit of the exercise. All right.